10 psychological truths you should practice before it's too late. Every day, your mind, heart, and spirit are shaping your destiny, whether you're aware of it or not. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This video isn't about motivation. It's about mastery, the 10 invisible things you must work on every single day to become whole. Part 1. Mastering the inner world, the foundation of self-work. Every single day, whether you realize it or not, you are shaping your inner world. Most people believe they are living life, but in truth they are being lived by their unconscious patterns. Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is the essence of inner work, the daily practice of observing, understanding, and transforming the unseen forces that rule your emotions, thoughts, and reactions. 1. Self-awareness. The art of seeing yourself. Clearly, self-awareness is not about overthinking or self-criticism. It's the courage to see what's actually there, both the light and the shadow. Jung believed that self-awareness begins when a person learns to look within instead of projecting their inner conflicts onto the world. Most people blame their circumstances or other people, but everything that triggers you reveals something unresolved inside you. Each morning you can begin this practice by asking, "What emotion dominates me today?" Instead of running from discomfort, sit with it. If you feel anger, don't suppress it, trace it. Ask yourself, what am I protecting? What boundary was crossed? What fear is being exposed? The unconscious communicates through emotions, dreams, and body sensations. When you listen deeply, you start to see that every reaction has meaning. Jung would say that consciousness grows each time you stop identifying with a feeling and start observing it. This is the moment you begin to reclaim your power. When you're angry, but you can watch your anger, you've already stepped into a higher dimension of yourself. You are no longer the emotion, you are the awareness behind it. That subtle shift changes everything. Self-awareness must also be compassionate. Harsh self-analysis becomes another form of ego control. Jung emphasized that awareness without love leads to fragmentation. You cannot heal what you still judge. The goal is not to fix yourself, but to understand yourself. Every part of you, the confident, the jealous, the fearful, the ambitious, has a message. The practice of daily self-awareness means to witness these parts and ask, "What are you trying to tell me?" That question alone opens the door to healing. 2. Shadow integration. Facing the darkness. Within Jung's most profound contribution to psychology is the concept of the shadow, the hidden, rejected parts of our psyche that we deny or suppress. The shadow includes qualities we label as bad, like envy, rage, greed, or weakness, but it also holds repressed potential, courage, power, creativity, and authenticity that we were once shamed for expressing. Every day, your shadow speaks to you through projections. When you feel irritated by someone's arrogance, it may be your own unacknowledged pride asking for attention. When you feel triggered by someone's success, it might be your buried potential demanding to be expressed. Jung said that what we dislike in others reveals what we have not yet accepted in ourselves. To work on your shadow daily means to become brutally honest about your emotional reactions. Whenever you catch yourself judging someone, pause and ask, "What in me is being mirrored right now?" This doesn't mean you excuse bad behavior. It means you stop wasting energy on projection and redirect it towards self-discovery. The people who challenge you most are often your greatest teachers because they reflect the parts of you you've exiled from awareness. Shadow integration is not a one-time event, it's a lifelong dialogue. Jung compared it to alchemy, turning the raw base material of the psyche into spiritual gold. Each day you face your shadow, you take a step closer to wholeness. You might notice recurring thoughts like, "I'm not enough," "I can't show weakness," or "I must be perfect." These are not just thoughts. They are defense mechanisms built to protect an old wound. By sitting with them consciously, you dissolve their control. The most powerful way to integrate your shadow is through awareness and embodiment. Notice how it shows up in your posture, tone, or relationships. Perhaps you withdraw when you feel misunderstood, that's the shadow of rejection. Or maybe you dominate conversations to feel significant, that's the shadow of insecurity. Each time you see it, don't attack it. Instead, bring curiosity. The moment you name it, it loses its grip. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The courage to do this work every day transforms the soul. It is the foundation of maturity and the beginning of true individuality. 3. Emotional regulation. Transforming energy, not suppressing it. Emotions are energy in motion. They are not meant to be silenced, but understood. Jung observed that repressed emotions don't disappear. They become symptoms, addictions, or projections. Every anxiety, every overreaction, every outburst has a root in something unprocessed. Emotional regulation is the art of transforming raw energy into awareness and choice. Start noticing how your body reacts before your mind even labels the emotion. Do your shoulders tense when you're criticized? Does your stomach tighten when you feel unappreciated? The body is the first place the unconscious speaks. Emotional regulation begins by slowing down and sensing what's happening inside. You can't control your feelings, but you can regulate how you respond to them. Each day offers countless opportunities to practice this. When someone cuts you off in traffic, or your partner says something hurtful, your nervous system fires up instantly. Most people let that energy hijack their mind. But you can take a conscious breath, pause and choose. Do I want to react from ego or respond from awareness? This small pause breaks the old pattern. It's a micro act of individuation. Jung viewed emotions as messages from the soul, not problems to solve. Anger can reveal boundaries that need respect. Sadness can signal that something within you longs for attention. Fear often shows where the next growth opportunity lies. When you stop labeling emotions as good or bad, they become guides. Every emotion, when processed, consciously transforms into wisdom. Daily emotional work also means creating healthy outlets for energy. Movement, journaling, creative expression, or solitude, these are rituals that help you metabolize emotions instead of storing them in the body. Jung often emphasized creative expression as a spiritual necessity. He himself painted, sculpted, and recorded his dreams to communicate with the unconscious. You too can transform your emotional charge into art, writing, or any act of creation. The goal is not to suppress feeling, but to give it shape and voice. The unconscious resists repression. Whatever is buried alive stays alive within you. If you avoid your anger, it becomes passive aggression. If you avoid sadness, it turns into apathy. If you avoid fear, it morphs into control. Emotional regulation means to meet the emotion before it mutates. To look at it, name it, breathe with it. That's how you stay free from your inner storms. 4. The relationship between ego, shadow, and self. Every day, your inner world is a battlefield between 3 psychological forces: the ego, the shadow, and the self. Understanding their dynamics is crucial if you want to grow consciously. The ego is the part of you that says, "I am this." It's the conscious identity, the mask you wear to function in society. It gives structure and stability, but also resists change. The shadow is everything the ego denies: emotions, impulses, and truths you don't want to face. The self, in Jungian terms, is the totality, the divine intelligence that contains both light and dark. The goal of daily inner work is not to destroy the ego, but to align it with the self. When the ego dominates, life feels narrow and exhausting. You try to control everything and live in fear of losing your image. When the shadow dominates, you act out of unconscious drives and sabotage yourself. But when the self leads, there's balance. You act from intuition, compassion, and strength simultaneously. This integration happens not through theory, but through awareness, moment by moment, breath by breath. Each day you can witness this interplay. When someone criticizes you, does your ego defend itself immediately? Can you pause and sense if your shadow feels ashamed or unseen? Can you let yourself, the inner observer, hold both perspectives without judgment? That's consciousness. Expanding. Jung believed the self is not something you become, it's something you remember. It's the eternal part of you that's always been whole. Working on this triad daily requires humility. The ego will always resist because it fears death. But every time you admit I was wrong, or I don't know, or I feel jealous, you allow the ego to soften. That surrender creates space for the self to shine through. The paradox is that your true power emerges not from perfection but from integration. 5. Making each day a spiritual laboratory. For Jung, daily life is not separate from spirituality, it is spirituality. Every challenge, every irritation, every joy is a chance to observe your psyche in real time. Your relationships are mirrors, your emotions are teachers, your dreams are guidance. The world becomes your laboratory for self-realization. Begin treating your daily experiences as symbols. If you keep meeting the same kind of conflict, ask what archetype is being activated. Are you reliving the wounded child, the hero, or the victim? Jung's framework of archetypes allows you to see that your life is a myth in motion. You are not a random collection of events, but a living story unfolding through patterns. When you see the symbolic meaning of your struggles, suffering loses its chaos and gains purpose. For example, if you're constantly overworking, perhaps your inner achiever archetype has hijacked your balance. If you always attract unavailable partners, maybe your lover archetype is still chasing approval from an early wound. Each day, you can observe which archetype is running the show right now. The moment you see it, you gain choice. Awareness liberates you from compulsion. Jung often described the psyche as a self-regulating system like the body. When one part is neglected, another compensates. If you live too rationally, your emotions erupt. If you live too emotionally, your logic rebels. The key is balance, a dialogue between opposites. Daily self-work means noticing where you're over-identified and bringing the other polarity into consciousness. It's like tuning an instrument. The psyche plays harmoniously only when its strings are balanced. 6. Turning observation into transformation. Observation alone is not enough. It must lead to transformation. Every insight requires action. Jung's concept of individuation, the process of becoming your true self, happens through lived experience, not intellectual understanding. It's not about reading more psychology, but about practicing awareness in daily choices. Ask yourself, how can I live more consciously today? Maybe it means setting a boundary with love instead of resentment. Maybe it means admitting your vulnerability to someone you trust. Maybe it means pausing before judging. These micro-actions accumulate into deep psychological change. Transformation is not a lightning strike, it's a series of daily alignments with truth. Jung believed the unconscious cooperates with the conscious mind when you show sincerity. When you truly commit to self-knowledge, dreams, coincidences, and symbols begin to guide you. The psyche wants integration. It's wired for wholeness. But it requires your participation, your willingness to look, feel, and act differently. That is the sacred responsibility of being human. Each day, remind yourself, the goal is not to eliminate struggle, but to bring meaning to it. Pain becomes sacred when you use it to awaken consciousness. The same energy that once created suffering can become the fuel for creativity, empathy, and wisdom. Inner work is not a burden. It's liberation disguised as responsibility. 7. The daily practice of presence. Presence is the doorway to the unconscious. Jung said that the psyche speaks through subtle impressions, dreams, slips of the tongue, intuitive nudges. But we miss them because we are too distracted. Practicing presence means slowing down enough to notice what's actually happening inside and around you. Each morning before you check your phone, take a few breaths and ask, what energy am I carrying today? This small ritual trains your awareness to sense the invisible. Throughout the day, pause occasionally and scan your body. Are you grounded or tense? Are you reacting or responding? This awareness bridges the conscious and unconscious realms. Presence also allows synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences Jung spoke about, to reveal themselves. When you're tuned in, life begins to feel guided. You might think of someone and suddenly receive their message. You might face a problem and see a symbol in a dream offering the answer. This is not magic, it's the self communicating through the fabric of reality, but only a present mind can perceive it. 8. Reclaiming the power of choice. Ultimately, daily inner work is about reclaiming the power of choice from your unconscious. Most people live as victims of habit, reacting to life from old wounds. But when you work on yourself every day through awareness, shadow, integration, and emotional regulation, you begin to choose who you want to be instead of repeating who you were. The unconscious is not your enemy. It's a vast field of potential waiting to be integrated. Every trigger, every discomfort, every repetitive pattern is a doorway. The ego will resist because it wants control, but the self only wants truth. When you surrender to that truth, life stops being a battlefield and becomes a journey of unfolding. Each day you are given two choices: to stay asleep in reaction or to wake up in observation. Jung's message is timeless. The more conscious you become, the freer you are. You can't control life, but you can control the meaning you give to it. And that meaning determines everything. Part 2. The work of the mind: discipline, focus, and truth. Every day your mind is shaping your reality. Whether you train it consciously or let it run wild, it's the filter through which you interpret life. Jung understood that the mind is not merely an organ of thought, it's the bridge between the conscious ego and the vast unconscious. To work on your mind daily is to take responsibility for what you allow to live in your head. It's a sacred act of psychological hygiene, cleansing illusions, sharpening focus, and aligning thought with truth. 4. Mental clarity. Clearing the inner noise. Mental clarity is not the absence of thoughts, it's the ability to see through them. Jung taught that much of what we call thinking is not thinking at all. It's repetition of unconscious patterns, a looping of inherited beliefs. The average mind is filled with noise, self-criticism, comparison, worry, and random fragments of memory. These thoughts create a fog that disconnects us from intuition and authentic insight. To cultivate clarity, you must first learn to observe your thoughts as if they were clouds drifting across the sky. Don't chase them, don't analyze them immediately, just see them. The simple act of observation separates the observer from the content. That is the birth of consciousness. Most people drown in their own inner dialogue because they've never discovered the silent witness behind the mind. Jung called this witness the standpoint of the self, the center that transcends both thought and emotion. Clarity requires discipline. Each day take time to declutter your mental space. Write down the thoughts that keep circling in your head. Externalizing them drains their emotional charge. Meditation, journaling, or even a slow walk without distractions allows your psyche to breathe. In those quiet moments, you begin to notice patterns, recurring fears, repetitive judgments, stories you've told yourself for years. Seeing these patterns is not a sign of failure, it's the beginning of freedom. Jung often warned that unexamined thoughts become autonomous complexes, small psychic entities that take control of your perception. A person possessed by a complex doesn't think, they are being thought by the complex itself. You can witness this when someone becomes obsessed with a grievance or addicted to a specific fear. Their mind loops endlessly, feeding on itself. Daily mental clarity prevents this psychic possession. Each time you question a thought, you weaken the complex's grip. Ask yourself daily, is this thought true? Is it mine or did I inherit it? Does it serve the person I'm becoming or the person I used to be? This kind of inquiry brings light into the dark corridors of the psyche. You begin to see how much of your mental activity is borrowed beliefs from parents, teachers, culture, religion. To think clearly, you must dare to think for yourself. Mental clarity is not about becoming empty, it's about becoming selective. A clear mind chooses its focus wisely. Jung believed that the conscious mind must act like a gatekeeper, filtering the unconscious impulses that rise into awareness. Without this discernment, the psyche becomes chaotic. Clarity, therefore, is not sterile detachment, but living order, the ability to prioritize what matters most and let go of the rest. When your mind is clear, intuition emerges naturally. You don't need to force insight, it reveals itself. The unconscious communicates not through noise, but through symbols, metaphors, and subtle knowing. A cluttered mind can't hear it. That's why daily clarity work is not just psychological, but spiritual. It reconnects you with your inner guidance system. 5. Truth over comfort. The discipline of honest thinking, Jung said. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Nowhere is this more evident than in our mental habits. The human mind constantly seeks comfort illusions that protect the ego from pain. We convince ourselves we're fine, that others are to blame, that we know who we are. But psychological growth begins the moment you stop choosing comfort over truth. Every day presents opportunities to practice radical honesty with yourself. When something triggers you, do you immediately rationalize it, or can you admit what it exposes? When you make a mistake, do you defend your ego, or can you accept responsibility? Jung emphasized that the unconscious feeds on denial. The more you avoid the truth, the more the shadow grows. To confront reality, inner and outer, is to take back your psychic energy from repression. Choosing truth over comfort is uncomfortable precisely because it dismantles the false identities you've built. It reveals where your ego has pretended to be strong but is actually fragile. It shows you how often you perform rather than live authentically. Jung would say this confrontation with truth is an initiation, a symbolic death of the old self. Each day you choose honesty, a small piece of illusion dies, making room for the self to emerge. You can practice this discipline by noticing where you lie to yourself. Do you stay in a relationship out of fear of loneliness but call it love? Do you say you're busy when you're actually avoiding something painful? Do you repeat affirmations of strength because you secretly feel powerless? These are not moral failures, they are invitations. The psyche doesn't punish dishonesty, it reveals it through discomfort. When you feel inner tension, it's a signal that your outer narrative and inner truth are misaligned. Jung often used dreams to expose self-deception. He believed dreams are the psyche's way of correcting imbalance. When your conscious attitude becomes too rigid, dreams introduce the opposite perspective. For example, someone who sees themselves as good might dream of committing a crime not because they're bad, but because the unconscious is demanding integration of repressed aggression. The dream's message: you cannot be whole if you cling to one-sided virtue. The same applies to your waking mind. Every denial creates distortion. To live by truth means to surrender your need to always be right. It's the willingness to let reality teach you. Each day something will challenge your perspective, a conflict, a failure, a contradiction. Instead of resisting, treat it as revelation. Ask what truth is trying to emerge through this discomfort. The ego sees humiliation, the self sees evolution. When you align your thinking with truth, you stop reacting defensively and start learning consciously. This mental discipline builds integrity. The word integrity comes from integrate, to make whole. Truth is the glue that binds the fragments of the psyche into coherence. Lies, even small ones, split the soul. When you deny what you feel, you create an inner civil war. When you face it, even if it hurts, the fragments reconcile. That's why every act of honesty is healing. It unites the divided parts of your psyche. The mind naturally seeks equilibrium. If you suppress truth long enough, it will erupt through symptoms: anxiety, burnout, insomnia, or projection onto others. The remedy is not control, but awareness. Each morning, remind yourself, I will choose truth today, even if it discomforts me. Over time, this becomes your psychological armor. You no longer fear what's real because you trust your capacity to handle it. Truth is not a static fact. It's a living process. As you evolve, your understanding deepens. What was true for you 5 years ago may no longer serve you now. Daily mental work involves updating your internal map. Ask yourself, Is this belief still aligned with who I am becoming? This flexibility keeps the mind alive and prevents spiritual stagnation. The moment you stop questioning your own truth, you fall into dogma, and dogma is the graveyard of growth. 6. Purpose alignment, thinking in service of the soul. A disciplined mind is not enough. It must be directed by purpose. Jung believed that each person carries an innate blueprint, a psychic pattern he called the individual destiny. When the conscious mind aligns with this inner purpose, life feels meaningful. When it doesn't, even success feels hollow. The daily work of the mind is to ensure that your thinking serves your soul, not just your ego. Most people think in survival mode. Their thoughts revolve around security, approval, and control. But when you awaken to your deeper purpose, thinking becomes creative, an instrument of manifestation rather than fear. Jung often observed that people fall into neurosis when they ignore their calling. The mind becomes restless because the soul is ignored. Meaninglessness, not pain, is the true source of suffering. To align with purpose, begin by asking, what truly energizes me? What feels natural, even when it's difficult? What values would I defend, even if no one approved? These questions bypass the ego's ambitions and reveal the direction of the called self. Purpose is rarely loud. It whispers through curiosity, synchronicity, and inner resonance. Each day, notice what draws you, not what the world demands, but what your soul longs for. When your purpose is clear, the mind becomes an ally instead of an obstacle. You no longer waste energy on trivial conflicts because you know what deserves your attention. Jung described this state as psychic economy, the efficient use of psychic energy. A purposeful mind doesn't chase every thought, it channels energy toward what truly matters. This focus is not rigid discipline but soulful commitment. However, purpose requires sacrifice. The mind must let go of distractions and illusions of control. Discipline is not punishment, it's devotion to what you value most. Each time you say no to something meaningless, you say yes to your evolution. Jung emphasized that individuation, becoming who you truly are, demands a continual pruning of the unnecessary. Your mind must become a gardener, cutting away what no longer contributes to growth. Working on purpose daily means staying conscious of your motives. Ask yourself, am I acting from fear or from alignment? From the need to prove or the desire to create? The mind easily disguises ego motives as noble intentions. Only self-honesty reveals the difference. For example, helping others can stem from compassion or from the need to feel superior. Achieving success can arise from authentic inspiration or from the fear of inadequacy. The same action, different consciousness, one liberates, the other enslaves. Jung saw purpose as a dialogue between the ego and the self. The ego sets goals, the self provides direction through synchronicity and intuition. When the two cooperate, life flows. When they clash, you feel blocked. That blockage is not punishment, it's feedback. The self is signaling that your current direction lacks soul. You can witness this in burnout, when your mind works hard but feels empty. The remedy is not more effort, but realignment. Ask, what am I doing that no longer feels alive? What have I abandoned that still calls me? Every day, give your mind a task that nourishes your purpose. Read something that expands your understanding. Reflect on what you learned from the day's challenges. Journal about where you acted from love versus fear. These micro-practices keep your mental compass aligned with the self. Over time, this alignment turns ordinary days into spiritual training grounds. You begin to sense that life itself is mentoring you. 7. The ego's resistance to discipline. No discussion of mental work would be complete without addressing the ego's resistance. Jung recognized that the ego is both necessary and dangerous. It gives you a sense of I, but it also fears losing control. The moment you introduce discipline, the ego protests. It prefers the familiar chaos of automatic thinking over the vulnerability of self-awareness. Each day you'll notice the ego's tricks, procrastination disguised as I'll do it later, self-pity disguised as I'm tired, or over-intellectualization, analyzing endlessly to avoid real change. Jung would call this psychic inertia, the tendency of the personality to stay in known patterns, even if they're painful. The ego clings to what's predictable because it equates familiarity with safety. The way through is compassion, not war. You don't conquer the ego, you educate it. Treat it like a frightened child that needs guidance. Discipline is not self-punishment, but self-parenting. You can tell yourself, I understand you're scared, but we're doing this anyway. Each day you practice discipline gently but firmly, you strengthen the bridge between ego and self. The mind becomes a servant rather than a tyrant. Jung compared this process to taming a wild horse. The horse's power is not destroyed, it's harnessed. Likewise, your mind's chaos becomes creativity when guided by awareness. The goal is not to silence the ego, but to integrate it into a higher order of intelligence. When the ego cooperates with the self-discipline feels natural, an expression of inner harmony rather than external force. 8. Thinking as an act of creation. Jung believed that thought is creative energy. Every idea you dwell on shapes your psychic reality. To work on your mind daily means to think consciously as a creator. Most people think reactively, their thoughts are responses to stimuli. But conscious thought is proactive. It directs energy toward desired transformation. This doesn't mean forcing positive thinking. Jung warned against toxic optimism because it represses the shadow. Instead, it means thinking truthfully, responsibly, and symbolically. Every thought you entertain becomes a seed planted in the unconscious. Feed your mind with meaning, and your life becomes meaningful. Feed it with fear, and your life reflects fear. You can practice conscious thinking through visualization, reflection, or problem-solving that honors your values. Ask, what am I creating with this thought? What kind of inner world am I cultivating right now? Jung saw imagination as the royal road to the unconscious, a tool for transformation. When you imagine possibilities with awareness, you activate archetypal forces within the psyche. Thought becomes alchemy. Thinking consciously also means maintaining boundaries within the mind. Not every opinion, trend, or ideology deserves residence there. You can listen to others without absorbing their worldview. Jung called this psychological independence, the ability to think without collective hypnosis. Each day remind yourself, I don't have to believe everything I think, and I don't have to think everything I hear. That sentence alone can save your sanity in a world drowning in information. When your mind becomes conscious, it stops being a prison and becomes a sanctuary. You realize that your reality is not fixed, it's constantly sculpted by perception, and perception can be trained. A disciplined, clear, and truthful mind transforms suffering into wisdom, confusion into understanding, and chaos into meaning. That is the real miracle of thought. Part 3. The work of the heart. Connection, forgiveness, and compassion. Every human being longs for connection, not the superficial kind that fills silence, but the soul-level bond that mirrors truth. Jung understood that the heart is not merely an organ of emotion. It is the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, between the individual and the collective. To work on your heart daily means to refine how you relate to yourself, to others, and to life itself. Connection, forgiveness, and compassion are not sentimental virtues. They are psychological disciplines that determine whether you evolve or remain trapped in emotional repetition. 7. Empathy without self-betrayal. Loving without losing yourself. Jung observed that empathy is one of the highest expressions of consciousness because it requires you to step beyond the ego's boundaries and feel into another's experience. Yet he also warned that empathy without boundaries becomes possession. When you absorb another's emotions as your own, you're not practicing empathy, you're abandoning yourself. Every day you're exposed to emotional energy, people's moods, expectations, projections. Most people unconsciously merge with these energies and mistake them for compassion. But compassion without differentiation drains the psyche. Jung would describe this as inflation of the ego, when you identify with the helper archetype and forget your own limits. The result is resentment, exhaustion, and quiet rage toward those you're trying to love. Working on your heart means learning to love while remaining rooted in individuality. Real empathy observes suffering but does not drown in it. You can say, "I see your pain, I care for you, but I cannot carry this for you." That boundary is not coldness, it's respect for the autonomy of both souls. Jung taught that genuine love requires separation, two whole beings meeting freely, not two wounded parts clinging for survival. You can practice this daily by checking in with your body. When someone shares their pain, notice what happens in you. Do your shoulders tighten? Does your breath shorten? That's your body absorbing psychic tension. Ground yourself before responding. Imagine your awareness as light expanding from your heart, warm but not merging. You are a presence, not a sponge. Jung viewed relationships as mirrors for individuation. The people you love the most often activate your deepest complexes. When you feel pulled to fix, rescue, or control, it's the psyche replaying old patterns of attachment. Instead of reacting, pause and ask, what part of me is being activated here? The healer, the parent, the victim. By observing the pattern, you transform empathy into conscious love. Loving without losing yourself is not detachment, it's maturity. It's the realization that everyone has their own destiny, and pain is often the soul's way of learning. You can accompany someone through darkness, but you cannot walk it for them. When you respect that boundary, your love becomes cleaner, wiser, and far more enduring. 8. Forgiveness as freedom. Releasing the emotional shadow. Forgiveness is one of the hardest and most misunderstood forms of inner work. Jung would say that forgiveness is not about moral virtue, it's about psychic integration. Every resentment you hold is an energetic knot that binds you to the past. The psyche cannot move forward while clinging to what should have been. To forgive is not to excuse, it is to reclaim the energy trapped in old pain. Each day notice the subtle grudges that live in you. Maybe it's irritation towards someone who disrespected you, or disappointment toward yourself for past choices. These emotional residues form what Jung called complexes, autonomous clusters of energy charged with feeling. When triggered, they hijack your consciousness. You think you're reacting to the present, but you're actually reliving an ancient wound. Forgiveness dissolves these complexes by bringing awareness and compassion to them. The first step is acknowledgement. You cannot release what you refuse to feel. Allow yourself to admit, yes, I'm still angry, or yes, that hurt me deeply. Emotional honesty is not weakness, it's courage. Jung believed that what remains unconscious controls us. By feeling consciously, you transform reactive emotion into insight. The wound becomes a teacher. Forgiveness also involves dismantling projection. Often the person we cannot forgive is carrying an aspect of our own shadow. They embodied something we repress, betrayal, weakness, or selfishness. That's why it stings so deeply. Jung would suggest asking, what does this person reflect about me that I haven't accepted? This question doesn't justify their actions, but frees you from identification with victimhood. You begin to see the symbolic meaning behind the event, what your soul needed to learn through that encounter. Working on forgiveness daily might mean small acts releasing judgment when you think of someone, breathing compassion into painful memories, or wishing peace for a person even if they never apologize. Each time you do this, you withdraw energy from resentment and return it to yourself. The unconscious doesn't heal through logic, it heals through symbolic gestures of release. Jung's alchemical metaphor applies perfectly here. He saw the psyche as a vessel where opposites must be reconciled: love and hate, anger and compassion. Forgiveness is the fire that fuses these opposites into unity. It transforms poison into wisdom. The process is uncomfortable because it burns away the ego's need to be right. But when the fire subsides, what remains is freedom, not for the other person, but for you. There's a profound paradox in forgiveness. You cannot truly forgive until you understand that everyone acts from their level of consciousness. People hurt others not out of pure evil, but out of unconsciousness. They are driven by their own wounds. Seeing this doesn't excuse behavior, but it reveals context. Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Forgiveness is the conscious application of that principle. Daily practice before you sleep. Visualize releasing one person, one moment, or one emotion from the grip of bitterness. Say silently, I free you, and I free myself. This is not spiritual bypassing, it's psychic hygiene. You're cleaning the inner house so new energy can enter. Over time, this practice dissolves the emotional residue that once clouded your perception. You wake lighter, clearer, and more compassionate toward humanity. 9. Authentic connection, relationships that nourish the soul. Jung believed that relationships are not coincidences, they are psychic appointments. Every person you meet reflects something about your inner world. Some awaken your light, others awaken your shadow. The goal is not to avoid difficult relationships, but to relate consciously through them. Working on connection daily means cultivating relationships that mirror growth, not repetition. The first step toward authentic connection is self-connection. Most people seek intimacy without ever having met themselves. They look for others to fill the void created by their own disconnection. But you cannot share what you have not cultivated within. When you are disconnected from your feelings, you attract people who mirror that disconnect. Jung described this as the projection of the anima or animus, the inner, masculine or feminine image we unconsciously seek in others. We don't fall in love with people. We fall in love with the parts of ourselves we see reflected in them. Each day, reconnect with yourself before reaching out to others. Ask, what do I actually feel right now? What do I need emotionally? What am I hoping to receive from this interaction? When you know your motives, you relate from clarity, not craving. This prevents the emotional entanglement that leads to dependency and disappointment. Authentic connection also requires vulnerability. Jung wrote that only the wounded physician can heal, meaning we can only connect through shared humanity. Hiding your flaws creates distance. Pretending to be perfect invites superficiality. When you speak honestly about your fears, struggles, and hopes, you create resonance. The heart recognizes itself in another. This kind of openness transforms relationships into catalysts for individuation. However, vulnerability must be balanced with discernment. Not everyone can hold your truth. Daily heart work involves sensing which relationships are reciprocal and which are parasitic. Jung would call this differentiation the ability to see others as separate psyches with their own paths. When you stop expecting others to complete you, you free them to be themselves. Paradoxically, that freedom deepens intimacy. Observe your interactions throughout the day. Do you feel expanded or contracted after spending time with someone? Expansion signals resonance, contraction signals misalignment. You don't have to cut people off harshly, just adjust your energetic distance. Some connections are meant for depth, others for lessons. Authentic connection honors both without resentment. Jung saw love as a force of individuation. True love doesn't make you smaller, it makes you more yourself. It mirrors your potential, not your dependency. Each day, practice love as conscious seeing. Look at others beyond roles and projections. See their struggle, their longing, their light without trying to change them. This is not passive acceptance, but sacred witnessing. To see someone fully is the rarest form of love. Authentic connection also extends to the collective. The heart that has known pain develops empathy for humanity. You begin to sense that every person carries unseen burdens. This awareness dissolves judgment and replaces it with compassion. The world becomes less of a battlefield and more of a shared healing ground. Jung would say, this is when the personal unconscious merges with the collective unconscious. Your heart begins to beat in rhythm with the whole of life. 10. Daily practices for the heart. To work on your heart every day is to cultivate emotional intelligence through intention. Here are daily Jungian practices to strengthen connection, forgiveness, and compassion. Morning reflection. Upon waking, ask, "What is my heart carrying today?" Name the emotion without labeling it good or bad. This simple recognition harmonizes the conscious and unconscious. Active imagination. Jung developed this method to dialogue with inner figures. When a painful memory or resentment arises, close your eyes and visualize it as an image. Speak with it, ask what it wants, then visualize embracing or releasing it. This symbolic dialogue integrates emotional fragments. Heart-centered breathing. Place your hand on your chest, breathe deeply, and imagine exhaling tension from the heart space. This grounds you before entering emotionally charged interactions. Boundaries as love. Before saying yes to requests, pause and feel your body's reaction. A no that honors your truth is an act of self-respect, and that respect makes future yes genuine. Evening forgiveness ritual. Before sleep, recall one situation from the day that stirred resentment. Visualize it dissolving in light. Say to yourself, "I release this experience. It taught me something." This prevents emotional residue from hardening into bitterness. These practices are not about sentimentality. They are acts of psychological precision. Each small act of heart awareness rewires your unconscious, transforming reaction into response and pain into compassion. Part 4. The work of the spirit, living as the whole self. The highest form of self-work is not control, but surrender. Jung believed that the ultimate goal of psychological development is not perfection but wholeness, the conscious realization of the self. The self is not the ego's improved version. It is the divine intelligence that governs both the conscious and unconscious dimensions of existence. Working on your spirit each day means aligning with that inner totality, learning to live not from fear or desire but from the quiet authority of the soul. 11. Surrender to the self, letting the higher intelligence lead. Jung said that the ego is like a small island floating on a vast sea. Most people spend their lives trying to expand the island, build walls, and control the tides. But the deeper work begins when you realize that the ocean, the unconscious, is not your enemy. It's the source of life itself. Surrendering to the self means allowing that greater intelligence to guide your path instead of forcing your way through resistance. Surrender is often misunderstood. It's not resignation nor passivity. It's active cooperation with what life is showing you. The ego says, "I must make this happen." The self says, "I will align with what is meant to unfold." Each day you can practice surrender by observing where you're forcing outcomes. Are you clinging to relationships that no longer nourish your soul? Are you striving for recognition that feels empty? The moment you release control, synchronicity begins to work. Jung described synchronicity as a meaningful coincidence, events connected by inner purpose rather than outer cause. The self communicates through synchronicity. When you're aligned, the external world mirrors your inner truth. You meet the right person, hear the right message, or experience a sudden insight that shifts your direction. These are not accidents. They are reflections of harmony between your conscious will and the deeper order of life. Working on your spirit daily means paying attention to these subtle signs. They are the language of the self. Surrender also means trusting your suffering. Jung wrote that the way is within us, but not in the ego. When the ego's plans collapse, it feels like failure, but from the self's perspective, it's initiation. The breakdown of control is the invitation to transformation. Each disappointment, each ending is a portal through which the greater self can emerge. When you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to reveal in me?" you shift from victimhood to spiritual maturity. You can practice surrender in small ways. When faced with uncertainty, instead of rushing to fix it, pause and listen inwardly. Ask your intuition, "What is life asking of me now?" Then act from that quiet knowing, even if it defies logic. The self speaks in whispers, not commands. To hear it, you must quiet the mind's noise. This daily alignment with inner wisdom is the foundation of spiritual discipline. 12. Individuation becoming the whole you were meant to be. For Jung, individuation was not an intellectual idea, it was the soul's central task. It means becoming who you truly are, integrating all parts of the psyche into harmony. Most people live fragmented lives, one self at work, another in relationships, another in solitude. Individuation unites these fragments into a coherent whole. The process is not about becoming special, it's about becoming real. Each day, individuation invites you to integrate opposites within yourself. Your rational mind must embrace intuition. Your masculine energy must balance the feminine. Your light must include the shadow. Jung saw these polarities as necessary tensions, the psyche's way of generating growth. The self can only emerge when opposites are held together, without repression or denial. You can observe this daily in small conflicts, the part of you that wants to act versus the part that wants to rest, the one that seeks connection versus the one that fears vulnerability. Instead of choosing sides, pause and witness both. Ask, what does each part need? This dialogue between opposites is the essence of inner alchemy. Each time you integrate tension instead of avoiding it, you become more whole. Individuation also requires authenticity. Jung noted that the greatest tragedy of the modern individual is conformity, the loss of soul through adaptation to collective norms. To individuate is to think and live according to your inner truth, even when it contradicts the world's expectations. Every day ask yourself, am I acting from inner authority or external approval? Each honest answer moves you closer to the self. Dreams are vital tools in individuation. Jung saw dreams as direct messages from the unconscious, balancing your one-sided attitudes. If you live too rigidly in logic, your dreams become emotional. If you're lost in emotion, they become symbolic and intellectual. To work spiritually each day, record your dreams, symbols, and patterns. They are not random, they are mirrors of the dialogue between ego and self. The path of individuation is circular, not linear. You don't reach the self once and for all. You spiral closer through cycles of awareness, crisis, and renewal. Every challenge is another invitation to integrate more of yourself. Jung called this the path of descent, entering the depths of your own psyche to retrieve lost fragments of soul. This descent is not depression, it's initiation. The darkness you face within is the womb of rebirth. Individuation is not isolation. As you become more whole, you naturally serve the collective. Jung said that the truly individuated person becomes a bridge between worlds, a vessel through which the collective unconscious can express itself creatively. This is the ultimate purpose of personal development, not self-obsession but service through authenticity. 13. Synchronicity, living in alignment with the unseen order. When the spirit becomes conscious, life stops feeling random. Jung's concept of synchronicity bridges psychology and spirituality. He proposed that the psyche and the world are not separate realms, but interconnected expressions of one underlying reality. Events in the outer world can mirror inner states of consciousness. To work on your spirit daily means to cultivate awareness of this symbolic order. Synchronicities occur when you are aligned with the self. You might think of someone and they call. You might face a moral dilemma and encounter a passage in a book that answers it. These coincidences are not magic. They are evidence that the unconscious and the external world share the same archetypal patterns. Jung called this unus mundus, the one world that unites matter and psyche. To live with awareness of synchronicity, you must slow down and perceive symbolically. Nothing is just happening. The song on the radio, the word that catches your eye, the stranger's remark, all can be messages from the deeper order. Each morning, set the intention to see meaning, not randomness. Ask, what is life trying to communicate today? When you view reality this way, every experience becomes sacred text. However, Jung warned that we must balance openness with discernment. Not every coincidence is a sign. The ego can easily project meaning where there is none. The test is resonance. True synchronicities evoke a quiet recognition in the heart, not frantic excitement. They confirm alignment, not inflate the ego. As you refine this awareness daily, your intuition strengthens, and you begin to live in partnership with the mystery. Synchronicity transforms faith from belief into experience. You no longer need to hope that life is guided, you witness the guidance directly. This realization cultivates humility and awe. You understand that you are not the center of the universe, yet you are intimately connected to its intelligence. The boundary between inner and outer reality dissolves, revealing a single field of consciousness moving through all things. 14. Wholeness, the union of opposites. Wholeness is the natural state of the soul. Fragmentation is the illusion created by the ego. Jung believed that psychological suffering arises from separation, the disconnection between mind and body, emotion and intellect, human and divine. To work on your spirit daily means to remember that nothing in you is outside the divine order. Every thought, impulse, and emotion is part of the totality-seeking expression. The alchemists whom Jung studied deeply symbolized this process as the conjunctio, the sacred marriage of opposites. The sun and moon, masculine and feminine, heaven and earth, all must unite. In psychological terms, this means reconciling contradiction. To live spiritually is to hold paradox without collapsing into one side. You can be strong and vulnerable, logical and intuitive, light and dark simultaneously. Wholeness does not exclude, it integrates. Each day practice awareness of these opposites within. When you judge a feeling as wrong, ask what its opposite is trying to teach you. Anger may conceal a call for boundaries. Fear may protect wisdom. Wholeness means trusting that every emotion serves evolution. Jung once wrote, "In each of us there is another whom we do not know." Working on your spirit means befriending that unknown one. Wholeness also extends beyond the personal. Jung's idea of the collective unconscious shows that your individual transformation contributes to humanity's evolution. Every time you integrate a shadow, you lighten the collective field. Your healing ripples outward invisibly. This is why daily spiritual work is not selfish, it's service to the whole. 15. The sacred ordinary, bringing the self into daily life. The final movement of the spirit's work is integration into everyday living. Jung emphasized that enlightenment is not escaping the world but engaging with it consciously. The self must be lived, not idealized. You bring spirit into matter each time you act with awareness, compassion, and authenticity in ordinary situations. Each morning remind yourself, my life is the temple of my individuation. The way you speak, eat, work, and relate are all rituals of consciousness. Washing dishes, listening to someone's story, walking in silence, these are spiritual acts when done with presence. The self expresses through simplicity. The ego seeks transcendence through escape. The self reveals transcendence through participation. When you stop dividing life into spiritual and mundane, you begin to experience unity. The divine hides in the details, the warmth of sunlight, the breath between thoughts, the eyes of another human being. Working on your spirit daily is not about reaching heaven but recognizing it here. Jung believed that meaning is the medicine for the soul. When you live from the self, everything gains symbolic depth. Suffering becomes initiation. Work becomes expression. Relationships become mirrors. Even loneliness becomes communion with your own depth. The entire fabric of existence starts speaking in archetypal language, teaching you through contrast, rhythm, and reflection. This is not mystical idealism, it's mature spirituality grounded in psychology. To live as the whole self is to navigate life's dualities consciously, to be human and divine, finite and infinite all at once. The work never ends yet, it ceases to feel like work. It becomes love in motion, the daily choice to align your small self with the great self until there is no difference between the two. Jung taught that life's purpose is not happiness but wholeness. Every small act of awareness, honesty, compassion, or surrender, it all leads you closer to your true self. You're not broken, you're becoming. If this message resonated, share it with someone who's ready to awaken. And remember, transformation is not found in what you do once, it's found in what you do every day.